What is up, you guys? I am Missy Renee, and in today's video we're going to talk about worlds within worlds, also known to some as quantum jumping, and how this works in the context of manifestation. So if manifestation and conscious creation are topics that you are interested in learning more about, then definitely do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Also, do not forget to hit the thumbs up button. This tells the YouTube algorithm to put this video in front of a wider audience. If you are interested in more of my resources, such as working with me one-on-one, or my workshops, my new Facebook group, all that good stuff, have it down in the description box below. So definitely do not forget to check it out. And this has been a massively requested video for quite some time. Many of you have been asking me to put a video out talking more in depth about quantum jumping, or as Neville called it, the worlds within worlds, how this works in relation to manifestation, as well as my own personal experiences jumping between different realities. And to be 1000% honest with you guys, I was always a little bit leery to come out with a video like this. Now, I have in the past made a video that touched on quantum leaping. If you want to check out that video, I'll have it down in the description box. But today I'm going to go a little bit deeper because I was honestly quite floored to see how many of you wanted me to talk about this and wanted me to go into more detail about this. So I will ask that each and every one of you go into this video with an open mind and an eagerness and understanding to learn more. If this is not your jam, by all means, you do not have to watch this video. But if this is your cup of tea, if you are interested in learning more about jumping, about the worlds within worlds, as Neville put it, then definitely stick around to the end of the video, because today I'm going to talk all about what this is, how to do it, my own experiences with it, and how this can be applied in the context of whatever it is you desire to manifest. So without further ado, let's jump on in. Have you ever had a feeling when you've met somebody new for the first time that you've met them somewhere before? Or perhaps you went to a new place for the first time and were overcome with the sensation of deja vu, like it is somewhere that you recall or somewhere that you have already been to? These phenomenons are in fact examples of our shifting and moving between states. And the reason for this phenomena is, quite frankly, because creation is already finished. Everything that possibly is, was, and will be already exists. It is its own state of consciousness waiting to be experienced. So we are not even creating so much as we are choosing and moving, because there is nothing to create. There is only things to experience. Everything already exists right now in a state of possibility, as one of infinite possibilities that we could experience. And what determines what remains a possibility and what becomes a 3D experience is our awareness. And there's even more scientists coming out in support of parallel realities. There have been a growing number of physicists who agree that there are more than just this single world that we live in. Some examples of this would be the many worlds theory. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics holds that there are many worlds just like ours in parallel with each other through space and time, all existing in the same time and place as ours. But most notably are the experiences that people have had. Instances where people have literally moved into a world that, though it may look like the world that we came from, it is noticeably different. It is notably different. And for some of us, it is very much intentional. Neville talked about several of his own experiences that he had moving in and out of these different realities. And I'm going to read to you guys one of those instances that he had Take a look at this. I think it was 52 or 53 when I was living in Beverly Hills on El Camino. It was a home that we rented. It was furnished, and we had a double bed. I'm on the right side of my body. It's the wee hours of the morning. And suddenly, I am seeing what I should not see. I am seeing the interior of a very plush place. Consciousness follows vision, and I walk into the place. I remembered where I was when it started. So I came back to the bed on my right side. Again, I walked into the place, and again, I came back. I did it over and over and over, and then I decided to experiment. I thought I'd simply adventure. So, as consciousness now followed vision into this place, I stepped into it, and it actually closed upon me as though you had closed the curtains, just as though these curtains were now suddenly drawn and I couldn't see you. I'm completely shut out from the world that I still remember in Beverly Hills. I know where my body is. It's on a bed, a double bed. My wife is in it, and here I am completely shut out from that world. For a moment, it doesn't disturb me. I'm going to experiment. Everything is real, just like this, as solid as this little lectern is now. I am to myself as solid as I am now. I walk through the door into a palatial suite of rooms. I examine all the things. It's unoccupied, but ready for occupancy, but not occupied. I come out into a hallway, and I started walking this hallway. When I got to the end, I noticed that the whole thing was luminous. Brilliant, brilliant light. 2 ladies were coming down the hallway, and I said, "Ladies, this is a dream," for I remembered the origin of it all. I was on my bed, on the right side of my body, and the whole thing started that way. So I said, "This is a dream." They did exactly what any lady would do if a stranger met them in a hallway and announced, "This whole thing is a dream." They would think that one who made that announcement was insane. So they acted just as any lady would act, and they got as far removed from me as they could against the wall. But they couldn't go through it. And they walked as fast as they could in that manner, one behind the other. Then, as they got to the end, they turned and made their exit. I said to myself, "Now, Neville, you know that this whole thing began as it began, so now you want to wake up and get back." Well, I closed my eyes and imagined I'm back. Opened my eyes. I'm still there. I closed my eyes again, and I said, "I'm back. This is a dream. Wake up." I opened my eyes. I'm still standing there. I am completely shut out in an entirely different world, and there is no way back. But I must go home. There are unfinished things in my world. I said, "Come on, Neville, you've got to get back." While lying on my bed, I walked into it, and the world is just as real as this. That's the world, and there are worlds within worlds into which everything goes. Nothing dies, and there are worlds that are, relative to this, non-existent, judged by mortal minds. Now, this is an absolutely wild concept to process, and I understand that. But Neville was able to, through his mind, through opening his mind, he was able to move from the world that he was in when he fell asleep to another world entirely, just as solidly real as this 3D environment that you're sitting in now and that I'm sitting in now. And the more and more that I dove into my practice with the law, and the more that I exercised this muscle of imagination, I wanted to see just how far this rabbit hole could go. Like Neville, I wanted to explore. So I did. And I had known since I was a little girl that there is more to this world than what appears. I had experiences that I could not explain through any logical means. And the first time I remember having one of these experiences was when I was in grade school, and I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, and I was sitting at my desk and my teacher was talking, and one minute I'm sitting there half paying attention and half mind wandering, and I close my eyes, and when I open my eyes, I'm standing up next to my desk, and when I look over, I see myself sitting there. I see my body, and I looked around the room and I saw everyone sitting there. Nobody seemed to notice me standing there outside of my body, but I was able to take a look at everyone around me, and I just remember feeling this overwhelming sense of peace and curiosity. But then I remembered that in order for me to actually be able to answer any questions or partake in the class, I needed to go back into my body. And so my eyes closed, and when they opened again, I was sitting at my desk. And that was the first time I knew that there are such things as out-of-body experiences, because this was literally what happened to me. And we're doing take 2 since my camera died, hence the change in appearance. So I had these experiences ever since I was a little girl, and that was the first time, but it certainly would not be the last. So I grew up always knowing, just having this knowing, this gut urge or this gut feeling that there is more to this life than what appears. There is more to this experience than what we are led on to believe. Because again, I could not explain these events that had happened to me. And there were multiple accounts similar to mine. So who's to say what is actually real? And it was this knowing that kept me in a state of allowing, kept me in a state that helped me to suspend my disbelief enough to accept what to some people would be complete and utter fantasy, because it sounds completely insane. Yes, I know. But it was this feeling and this knowing that kept me going on this journey. And it was a couple of years ago now that for the first time I experienced another world. I had stepped into a whole new reality. It was a couple of years ago that I had my first experience with these worlds within worlds. And I remember the day vividly. I remember the day that this happened, about 2.5, maybe 3 years ago. Obviously, by this time, I had been successful with the law, very successful with the law. I had complete and utter faith that what I imagined I would ultimately create. I had manifested incredible things. I had manifested love. I had manifested money. I had manifested health. I had manifested miraculous things for other people. And I got to a point where I wanted to see how far this really goes. I think at some point, and I believe this is what happened to Neville, you want to push the boundaries of reality. Like Neville had said in that lecture, I too wanted to explore. And I remember the first time that I came across Neville talking about this, Neville talking about the worlds within worlds. And this was maybe a handful of days before my first experience as well. And I remember thinking, my God, that is wild. It sounds completely fantastical. It sounds like a fiction story. It sounds like a fantasy. But knowing what I know and from what I have experienced, there is more to this reality. There's more to this world than what we initially are led on to believe. And so I was inspired to walk into the picture, to step into a new world. And it's important to note that at this time, I had already been practicing for a while. I had already greatly improved with my SATs, with my visualizing, through meditation. I had certainly strengthened my mind. I had certainly strengthened my imagination. My SAT scenes got very descriptive to the point where it felt like I was really in that scene in imagination. And one of the things that happened as my practice began to strengthen was I noticed I was having a lot more dreams. Lucid dreams, to be specific, which was truly odd because I never remembered my dreams before. Before I started to read Neville, before I really started to practice using my imagination, I never would remember my dreams. But now I was able to actually walk around in a place in my dream, and it was incredibly descriptive. And so the night that I first stepped into a new world, I had set the intention beforehand, before I had gone to bed, that this was something that I wanted to experience. So I did my nightly routine as usual, went to bed, nothing special. But when I came to, I noticed that I was on a street. I was walking down a street in what looked like this village or small town. There were stores on either side of the street, and there were booths that had been popped up. It almost appeared to be some sort of flea market, and there were people selling things. There were vendors there selling food and artwork and things like that. And I had never in my life been to this town before. I didn't know where I was. All that I did know was that I was dreaming, because with lucid dreaming, you still know that you're dreaming. But everything still felt so insanely real. And that night, up until that point, was the most vivid and visceral lucid dream that I ever had. I could feel the gravel crunching beneath my feet. I remember that it was warm out, and that the cool breeze that was wafting through just felt amazing. People were walking to and fro. People were walking by me, and I could feel as they walked by. I could hear laughter. I can hear chatter as people were talking to these vendors and bustling to and fro, exploring different tents or different booths. And I noticed as I was walking along, when I looked to my left, I saw between two buildings, there was a clearing, there was an opening, and out a ways was the ocean, or at least what appeared to be the ocean. It might have been a sea, I don't know. And that's when I noticed that faint smell of salt in the air. My senses were alive, and they were all going off. It felt so real. But at this point, I still knew that I was dreaming. I knew that this was just a dream. So I had remembered Neville talking about a similar experience that he had in one of his lectures. And in that lecture, he mentioned that he grabbed a hold of an object in the dream and then forced himself to wake up. And when he woke, he was still in that location where he was dreaming, although now he was completely awake. So I kept walking a little ways, looking for something that I could hold on to in that dream. And I walked a little bit, and then I noticed to my right was a cafe. This little cafe, and they had a couple of chairs and tables outside of the cafe. So I walked over and I ran my hand along the surface of the table. And I remember that smooth finish. I remember every detail. And I grabbed a hold of the edge of the table, and I closed my eyes, and I said to myself, okay, Missy, you know you're dreaming, but now it's time to wake up. So wake up, wake up. And I opened my eyes, and when I did, I was still standing outside of that cafe. Only this time, I wasn't dreaming. I no longer had the sense that I was dreaming. I even did a couple of tests to make sure. I pinched my nose and held my breath, and I started to run out of air, so I needed to take another breath. Now, when you are lucid dreaming, if you were to plug your nose and hold your breath, you would still be able to breathe. That's one way to test whether or not you are dreaming. So this time, I'm in this new place that I had never been before, and I am no longer dreaming. I am actually there. Now, I did say that this video is going to require a bit of an open mind, because I know how wild it sounds, but it was just as real as this room I'm in now. It was just as real as the place that you are now. And surprisingly, for being in a place that I had never been by myself, I should have felt fear. I should have felt scared, but I wasn't. I was excited, I was curious, and I wanted to go explore. And so I did just that. I walked up and down that street for hours. I explored that place for hours. I walked along and looked at each of the booths. I went in and took a look at some of the art, some of the items that they were selling, some of the food. I ordered a cup of coffee, and it was some of the most delicious coffee I had ever had. I remember talking to a lady that was vending, and she was absolutely lovely. And she was selling jewelry, and it was beautiful jewelry, handcrafted, didn't look like anything I'd ever seen before. And I must have sat there talking to her for a good 20 to 30 minutes. And the bizarre thing is, I don't think we were speaking English, but nonetheless I was able to understand her. And she gave me a ring as a gift. She insisted to not charge me for it. And at first I didn't want to accept it. I was like, no, let me pay for it. But she insisted. And so I just remember putting the ring on and thanking her. And I went back to exploring. I walked down to the beach. I started to make my way to the ocean or sea or whatever it was. I remember the feeling of the sand between my toes. I remember how warm it was. And I walked up until the waves were just starting to hit my feet. And I just sat there for a moment and closed my eyes and felt the water splashing over me. I heard the birds. I heard laughter from children. I felt at peace, and I was just in complete awe of this place. I have no idea where I was to this day. And so I explored this little town and this flea market for what had to have been hours and hours and hours until the sun was beginning to set. And it was around that time that I realized I should probably go back now. And so I closed my eyes and I tried to get myself back. Well, I opened my eyes again, and I'm still here. I'm still by this beach in this small town or village. And for a brief moment, I started to feel a little bit of that unsettling, that panic, so to speak. But just as quickly as it started to come on, I reminded myself how I got there. And I remembered what Neville said, use your imagination. And so I closed my eyes and I imagined sleeping in my bed. I imagined the smell of the pillows. I imagined the feeling of my partner next to me. I imagined the feeling of our sheets and our comforter. And then before I know it, I feel myself from standing upright to laying down horizontally. And I open my eyes and I am back in my bed. And I sat there for a moment completely gobsmacked at what had just happened to me. I didn't even know where to begin. And for a moment, I started to question myself, was that actually real? Did that really just happen to me? Finally, I decided I couldn't know for certain until I tried again. And so I got up and I started getting ready for my day. And it wasn't until about an hour or so later, when I was in the bathroom getting ready, that I looked down at my hand. And I'm still wearing the ring that the lovely lady had given me. And I felt this snap of energy, this chill of excitement running up and down my spine. I had, in fact, moved into a new world entirely, spent all day there, and then came back. Mind you, in this timeline, where I am now, I had only been gone for maybe a couple of hours, tops. But over there, I was gone all day. And that was the first time I had experienced these worlds. But it was certainly not my last. One of the most common questions that I get asked about this is how? How do we intentionally move between realities? How do we intentionally move into these new worlds within worlds? And the first and most important thing to master is the I am state. That is our true state. That is who we really are. The unconditioned awareness, or God. It is everything and it is nothing all at once. You need to strip away the identity that is you and the concepts that are you. Just like peeling an onion, You need to scale back the layers of conditioned consciousness, of concepts of yourself, until there is only awareness. And from that awareness, where you are no longer your body, you are no longer your identity, it is from there that you can begin to attach yourself to a whole new set of conditions and a whole new concept of self. I'm going to leave some links in the description box where you can read more about this state. But the single biggest piece of advice that I could give people is practice strengthening your mind. In order to develop the ability to enter these worlds and control them, is you must first begin to discipline your mind. You must practice using your imagination, using the law, and consciously manifest your desires. A way to think of the imagination is like a muscle. And just like with a physical muscle in our body, we must exercise it in order to strengthen it. The imagination is no different. We must learn to develop an unwavering attention and control over the direction of our thoughts. And again, you develop this ability and this control through the practice and exercise of the imagination. And the more that you begin to develop this, it is through the strengthening of our imagination that we begin to have the discipline and control that is needed to enter into these worlds and control them. Practice every day. Practice entering the I am state. Practice using your imagination and seeing yourself in another place entirely. Practice bringing in the imaginal senses, invoking those tones of reality. At first, this may be murky. It may not be the easiest thing to do, but just like with physical exercise and your body, through the exercise of the mind, you will begin to strengthen the imagination. And once you do that, once you have the strength and control of the imagination to go wherever you want to go, that is how you move between worlds. And that is ultimately how you manifest anything that you want. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, do not forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you are interested in checking out any of my other resources, I will have my links down below to sign up for one-on-one coaching, my blog, my workshops, my social channels, my podcast, all of that good stuff. I'll have it down in the description box, along with some helpful lectures where Neville talks about the worlds within worlds. We've got a whole lot of stuff down there for you guys, so do not forget to check it out. Also, do not forget to check out these videos over here. Each video is a different topic, but they all talk about how to manifest the best life ever. So until next time, you guys, take care, be well, and never forget how powerful you truly are. Happy manifesting, guys.